This has been an interesting time, folks. We've been watching the United States go through some pretty, let's just say, gnarly growing pains here in the last few weeks. And it's only been a little over a month since the new administration came into power, and we're seeing executive order after executive order after, many promises made, and some of them ostensibly kept, at least on the surface. We're seeing a mass auditing of all of these, governmental agencies that were originally sold to the public as righteous and moral enactors of policy worldwide that somehow would spread American exceptionalism, which really ended up only being money laundering schemes and a method to keep the uniparty, as it's called, in power. We're seeing all of that exposed for what we've always known it is, absolutely a lie designed specifically to fleece Americans and indebt us all the while and create greater and greater levels of economic slavery. Let's just put it to you like that. I think you can agree with that. We are seeing the reworking of trade policies worldwide. We're seeing the resurgence of tariffs. We're seeing countries that have for a very long time been tariffing us and our goods and wares and whatnot and services worldwide start to basically have it turned back on them. And the reality underlying all of this is, had we allowed, or not allowed rather, this to happen in the first place, the United States never would have, at least on some level, become so indebted in general and become such a international welfare state that it has become. We're seeing the mass layoffs of government bloat, which, I think again, anybody who's watching this, whether from the right or left side of politics, if we're being honest anyway, can understand that a lot of this was wasteful and nonsensical and designed specifically to create a leadership class, if you will, in this country that, well, for the longest time really hasn't even had to go to work. And now they're being called for their general laziness, their elitism, and their in some cases, unfortunately, overtly illegal practices when it comes to dealing with the American taxpayer situation. Now, obviously, we as Christians should not be so overtly focused on what's going on with the money. We know that Satan has ever used money to create all sorts of evils, and the fact that all of this is coming apparent now really shouldn't be any surprise. We're also seeing an overt promise being made by the administration to release files relating to some pretty significant events in our history: the JFK files, the RFK files, MLK files, information relating to the Epstein flight logs and all of the people that are named in all of those roles that, well, I think it's safe to say that we all know that those people are up to some pretty nefarious and disgusting things. We're starting to see some of the trafficking rings and drug rings and whatnot start to be taken down, and it's really, really difficult from an aerial view, perhaps not necessarily putting what the Bible has to say about the end times first. It's hard not to see these things as objectively good. But at the same time, we're seeing a mass dumbing down of the moral stature in this country. We're still seeing very high levels of divorce. We're still seeing single motherhood. Just it's skyrocketed and it's stayed elevated. We're seeing a consistency amongst the entire cabinet of this new administration, of all of them essentially saying that no matter what we do, no matter what we take care of here on the ground, we need to put Israel first. They don't overtly say Israel first, but they've all made it quite clear that they're some of their, if not their main priorities, is to make sure that this particular ally, I use that word loosely, is put at a very, very high level of preference over, well, perhaps even the release of some of these nasty files and whatnot. And unfortunately, I believe, and if you've been watching this for any length of time, it's not that I'm overtly anti-Israel, but I am, I'm not unaware of the fact that they've been up to some pretty nefarious stuff since their inception, and actually slightly before then. And since about the, 1915 to 1920s, we started seeing a lot of disgusting things happen in the land of Palestine that have led us to our current situation where America essentially supports Israel almost no matter what they do. They get away with some pretty horrific crimes, and that doesn't mean that their detractors themselves are clean or holy. I think they're all set up specifically to continually do battle so as to bring about this end time scheme that's just right around the corner. So it's really a mixed bag. And the truth of all of this is although we're not seeing gas prices drop, we're not seeing necessarily the egg prices drop, although I've seen them level off. They apparently fired the lady that killed all the chickens. We're still not quite seeing a return of mass production here in the United States, although there's rumblings of it everywhere. There's a number of different companies that have already taken very large steps to bring technological and financial and actual goods and services. They're bringing it back to the United States. They're starting to invest in construction. They've opened up drilling. They've done a lot of things that are set to prosper this nation in not too long of a period of time, in such a way that the mystery Babylon that the United States eventually turns into will quickly and easily come to pass, basically the moment the tribulation kicks off. And if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, I'm one of those weirdos that think that the 7 millennial day or 7,000 period of man is an actual reality on the ground. I believe that died in 33, returns in 2033, and if we take the Hebrew calendar for what it seems to be, not only a series of holy feasts for the people of Israel to follow, but also a picture of the conquering Messiah and his eventual return, the fall of 2023 or 2033 would be the date of his return. So if we subtract 7 years, you've got 2026 in the fall for the tribulation to kick off, meaning that everything that's happening on the ground right now is being set up and primed in such a way so as to explode on the scene just in time for the next round of elections here in the United States. Trump has made some pretty wild promises regarding how things are going to be here on out. He has essentially alluded to all of the bad guys who, not only the ones that went after him, of course, but those who have been acting nefariously on the governmental side of things here in the States for many numbers of years, unfortunately. And although the media has covered it up, and I honestly still personally believe that Trump and everyone in his cabinet are all involved, either directly or indirectly, and that they're all essentially one big brotherhood. It's been his job and his cabinet's position to come in and essentially be Satan's bus that rolls over all of his former allies, so as to give him more and more power, not only here in the United States, but specifically on a world scale, so much so that, well, the next big steps after the initial, I guess, rise of Babylon and the home country of Antichrist, read Ezekiel 28 if you don't believe me, he's set to kill his own people, and we know that the Antichrist destroys Mystery Babylon during the 6th bowl judgment. So there's every indication that Antichrist rises from here, so it would totally make sense that Babylon reaches her absolute zenith right as the tribulation, or right before the tribulation starts, so as to give him the maximum amount of socio-political springboard, if you will, to take over Europe and do war with the King of the South. The mass deportations that are going on here are going to be picking up. There is quite a bit of internal resistance, as one would expect, especially for there being so much ingrained bureaucracy behind the scenes that are fighting him because they believe he's the worst thing ever, but they've also been, in my opinion, overtly communist for a very long time. So it would only stand to reason that somebody who is not 100% on their side would be their mortal enemy. So for the time being, we're going to see some of that be tripped up, but unfortunately I don't think that the wheels that Trump and his team started spinning are going to slow down. I think it's only going to get faster from here. That being said, I don't think we should have any great hope that all the information that we're looking for with these particular files relating to specifically Epstein, but all the other occurrences in our history, are going to necessarily come to us with full disclosure in mind. I think there's a reason why they're not being initially just released to the public, because of so much implication of our, quote, greatest ally. But the truth is, for those who have been paying attention for the longest time, it's always been kind of clear that they had something to do with it, unfortunately. I'm not saying that this is a good thing or that we should hate them, but we should know that the same exact people that killed Christ, that same generation that will not pass away until he returns, is very much still at the very, very top of the power structure in the modern Western world, and we should not expect that to go away until Christ returns. That being said, the turnaround of faith during the tribulation is something I look forward to seeing. I look forward to seeing a great number of future brothers and sisters in Christ of the Jewish of the Jewish background come about and accept our Lord. It's going to be a wonderful thing. Next things to expect coming down the road, and I'll be making videos about this as I see it happen, but we just watched Germany essentially vote in a right-wing sort of government. It's more right-wing than it has been before. It's more like centrist and still more like our Democrats than it is like our Republicans. But that's a big turnaround from a country that essentially has gone full-bred communist for the last 60, 70 years, all out of their self-hatred for what did happen during World War II. And we're probably going to see a mass turnaround in all of those other major power centers in Europe, the other 7 heads of the beast from Revelation 13 and 17 that initially support Antichrist, not too long from now. I think Trumpism is going to become so popular, and it is, from all signs. Read X and see kind of what people are saying on the ground in those countries. They're getting tired of having to fully accept a culture that is completely antithetical to their own. And I think this was always intentional. We have a lot of that going on here in the United States. I personally am half Mexican and half white, so for me, I have to look at it purely empirically as much as I can, because the truth is there's good and bad people in all race, but the reality is there's national sovereignty for a reason. And when people are basically forced to commingle with other nations that don't hold the same ideals, whether Western or Christian or otherwise, you're asking for the situation that's on the ground. And it's only a matter of time before certain leaders are put in power that specifically start enacting a lot of the same policies as Trump. And this will eventually be the catalyst for the wars between the King of the North, Antichrist, and the King of the South, what I've called the Mahdi, basically the Messiah for Islam, when those countries finally get enough of having all of their, let's say, intentional invaders have to be forced back home from their formerly Western homes. All of the European nations, once they start evicting all of those who are not of their culture, we're going to see some pretty nasty stuff. But in the meantime, the United States is gearing up for the biggest comeback on the world scene. And although it will feel glorious, it will seem awesome when we get those paychecks, we should keep in mind that right around the corner is the greatest rug pull regarding Antichrist and his ascension, and him basically guaranteeing a continuance of the good times to keep rolling if we follow him, of course. So these are all very temporary. There's no reason to fall in love with the situation on the ground right now. There's no reason to fully throw all of your support behind the administration. We should be happy when the evil is exposed, but we should also know that it's very much in Satan's interest to make the current powers that be seem much, much, much greater over a certain period of time, so as to bring United States to her final position as Mystery Babylon of Revelation, the great whore, who is the nation that unfortunately brings Antichrist onto the scene. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's a bitter pill, to be honest. I was roughly conservatively minded for some time before I really started to, I guess, be made aware of the situation unfolding around us and what's really going on behind the scenes, the eventual rise of Antichrist through politics and religion and technology. Don't forget about Elon. He's absolutely doing everything I thought he would do and then some, to be honest. He's actually the one who's inciting a lot of these European citizens to risk being thrown in jail by opening their mouth online. X has been the, I think, single greatest turnaround, at least in regard to changing the power structure from the old liberal world order to this new pseudo-conservative world order, and I only think it's going to expand from there. And he's got other things in the works too. I know he's got a Tesla phone, and he's expanding Neuralink and his satellite systems, and it's going to be wild. So we need to keep our eyes open. We need to keep praying. We need to keep learning. We need to keep readying ourselves for a time when it's illegal to love the Lord and to teach others about him. And come what may, stand our ground in faith no matter what. The greatest victory of all. Again, let me know what you think. Comment, subscribe. Again, don't mean to be a naysayer, but we have to be sober. We have to be real about what's really going on, and we can't deceive ourselves or let ourselves be deceived. Matthew 24, because that's what this season is about, deception. Talk to you soon.